The truth is, anyone could have done that. It's not rocket science. But the mental decision and the mental courage to just have a conversation with someone that is way above you and just remember that at the end of the day, they're human. And I always remind myself that that person is probably my dad's age. And I talk to my dad a lot every day. So I'm very comfortable with that. So I never look at anybody differently. It doesn't matter if they're the CEO. I have never looked at them differently. I know they're human at the end of the day.
I've got checks to collect, but the debt's so high sometimes I forget and neglect to select girls that I get. Let's bet.
All right, everyone. I'm excited to do episode 2 of Tech State of Mind with Bernie Uche. We're going to have a great conversation today. I have a great guest, Dhiraj Hariramani, CEO of LearnIT. He's a consultant at Accenture, a public speaker, podcast host. Please go check out his podcast, the LearnIT podcast. And he's an educator. He's been educating young kids since he was a young kid, actually. Yeah, and he's a young guy, by the way. So I don't want to make it sound like he's old, but he's a young guy, but he's been educating people for a very, very long time. You might even say he was born to do this. And so we're going to have a great conversation about that. We've been working together on a couple projects with different schools here in Ontario. So Dhiraj, thank you for joining the pod. I'm really excited to have you here. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on this side of the show for a change, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm super excited. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, listen, I think I want to make sure that you get to introduce yourself to people in a way, because I could say whatever I want, but I'll never do it justice. So in true interview style, Dhiraj, why don't you tell me about yourself?
Absolutely, I'll be happy to. I don't know if I could do a better job than you, Bernie, but I'd be happy to give everyone listening a quick cliff notes on who I am and my story. I spent most of my life growing up in Uganda, Kampala, and that is where I found my love for education. It started off by my mom forcing me to volunteer at an orphanage and teach them about computers because they'd never seen one. And that's where I felt the magic of being able to teach someone something so creative, so different, that it inspires them in a whole other way. That's my first love, education. And in 2018, I graduated from high school in Uganda and I made my way to Canada, one-way ticket, 2 suitcases. And it was, a lot of people ask me why Canada, and the simple answer is it was a Google search and it landed me there. And so I came to UBC in Vancouver. I did my degree, Bachelor of Commerce and specialization in finance. I chose finance because I was good with numbers and good with Excel. And so I cracked my way into a couple of internships at Labatt and Scotiabank. And although I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed working at a large banking institution and cracking the numbers on Excel, I found that my journey lied elsewhere. And I wanted to be more people facing. I wanted to be a little bit more interactive with people. And I soon realized that that is also where my strength lied. In 2022, after I graduated, I pursued my opportunity at Accenture Consulting. I loved consulting, and people make the joke that people go into consulting when they don't know what to do. And that is absolutely the true for my case. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I figured I'd go and tell others what they should do as a 22-year-old. But jokes aside, I loved consulting because it gave me a large amount of autonomy and it accelerated my learning, which I think it does for anyone in their early career professional. And so I went to pursue Accenture and moved to Toronto to pursue that. And shortly after that, my first love came knocking back on my door, education. And I started LearnIT with the mission to change how education was done with high schools and focus on providing experiences to high school students that they would never forget for the rest of their lives, in an underlying theme of helping them learn something new, meet someone new, and just have an experience that will be unforgettable. So that's a little bit about me and the story that has brought me here so far.
That's an incredible story, and I think it's interesting, coming into Canada as an immigrant. You talked about the Google search. What did you Google? Like, what did you Google that made the drop harder?
Well, at the time, I have an older brother. He was in the UK, and my dad told me, "Well, you can't go to the UK because I need to diversify my risk." Those were his exact words. And I said, "Okay." And so it was between Australia and Canada, both because they're very welcoming to immigrants, and I wanted to stay somewhere long term. And I said, "Okay, I'll go to Canada." I made the decision just based on some research, and then it was either U of T, UBC, or McGill. I was blessed to get into all three. And then coming from Uganda, the biggest factor was let me check the weather reports. And then it was very easy for me to decide that Vancouver should be my destination entering into Canada.
See, my it's your story sort of reminds me of mine because I was thinking about the U.S. or Canada. I made a decision to go to Canada very early on. Just watching the news and things like that. I was like, I don't hear anything about this country. Must be chill. I want to go over there. Um, and I got into UBC, U of T, some of the schools in Alberta, and my dad said, "Listen, the weather's great in BC. You should go to UBC." And I said, "No, I want." No, I said, I, at the time, the rankings, they kind of flip flop between each other most of the time. But at that time, U of T was number one. So I said, "Dad, you want me to go to the number one school, right? You want me to be the best. That's where I want to go." Now, really, I wanted to watch the Raptors and TFC and,
Right. Yeah.
sports, and having that big city access, was important to me. But, there was a bit of the want to be at the number one, but that was easier to sell that, than that I want to go watch like the Raptors. Like,
There you go. It worked out for you and good because, I think a lot of the times when I spend time with people around that age where they're trying to identify where they want to go, it's become very competitive to say, oh, I want to go here, I want to go there. I would say it's become much harder, Bernie. The work that you and I had to do to get into U of T UBC is nothing compared to what these poor kids have to go through today. And so it's just put so much more pressure on them. But I always tell students, like, to me, whether I went to UBC or U of T, I don't think it would have made a monument of a difference. It was more about the friends, more about the people, and the amount of maturity you gain in just living alone. That was my perspective. It was less about the location and the amount of raw, authentic learning you have in just figuring shit out.
absolutely, absolutely. Living thousands of miles away from your comfort zone and having to figure it out. Do you think that helped you become a resilient entrepreneur in any way?
Um, I think part of it is I think there's parts of my personality that have been very like deeply shaped by the fact that if I was homesick, like, deal with it. There was no going home. It wasn't a car ride away. It wasn't a 1 hour flight away. It was a day away. And it was $2,000 away. So the answer was always no in my head. And so I always had this mentality that no matter what it was, my brain just started to work in a way where it doesn't matter, right? You keep going and you just keep focusing on what you've got here. And I think it doesn't relate directly to entrepreneurship, but I think it builds your mental muscles to just say, like, you can get through so much shit. I was 18, 19. I didn't have anyone in Canada. I didn't even know any relatives here. I didn't have anyone, right? So I think it just builds that mental muscle to keep going. And if I was to move to, for any reason to a new country today, I think I'll be okay because I've done it in the past and I know what it's like and I know what figuring it out looks like. And so I think it builds a bit of that mentality to just get through it.
Right, right. I got you. I feel that 100%, 100%. It makes you have to just figure it out, right? There's no safety net really there, right? So you have to figure it out. So let's dive into a game of this or that before I swing back into the questions. I want to keep this tradition alive. Also makes me know how much I need to judge people or not. So in this game, I'm just going to ask you this or that thing, and you give me a quick answer. So let's start with tech tools themselves. Mac or Windows?
I'm a Mac guy.
Okay, good Mac, and so far so good. iOS or Android?
iOS. I'm in the ecosystem, as bad as anybody is.
Well, once you're in, there's no leaving. It's done. Slack or Teams?
I'm both actually, but I'm starting to love Slack more.
Mm-hmm. It's funny when I joined Solemn, I was like, wow, what is this Teams? What's going on? I don't like this. And now, like, I'm more 50-50. I didn't think it would win me over, but I see it. I get it. So
I think Slack is better for startups. Teams is better for large beasts of organizations. Is my perspective.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. So here's a couple more, because you straddle both of these. So we're gonna make you choose, or you can plead the fifth if you want. But startup or big tech company, for which Accenture counts as one in my mind.
I think. Well, it's a probably a shitty answer for you in terms of in terms of being unsure, but I think every person should try both. And I think entrepreneurship and startups look very nice from the outside, and they're very shit from the inside. And so, but I think I know that your exponential learning curve is significantly higher in a startup environment if you do it the right way. And so I don't think startups are for everybody. In fact, I think it's for very few people. But I do think that it's something everyone should try once in their life. And same with a big tech firm. I think you should do both at some point in your career to know where you fit.
Mm-hmm. It's a sitting on the fence answer. I give you that, but you know what? I agree with you, and I'll tell you a story that sort of explains why I agree with you. My first job out of university was at it's not a tech startup, but it was a small company. Like, it was literally me and the owner. It was a company. And she recruited me out of university, and it was a sustainable building materials company. And I was like all about saving the world and all that stuff, which I still am. I drive an EV, so I'm still about that. But I didn't make it past the probation period. And she said to me, "You're a really, really smart guy. I can see that. But I think right now you need structure. And when you get that structure, you can come back and work on a startup."
Hmm.
And of course, at the time, I'm like, I got fired. Like, what is this? I'm freaking out about it. How do I tell my dad, my mom, and all this? And I took her advice. I went to a larger company, large tech company, and got some formal training. You get beat down in the trenches and all this kind of stuff. After 3 years, I went to a startup where I was like, hey, I am the go-to-market team, just me, and absolutely killed it. My discipline was on point at that point, because now I've sort of been, what's that word? Sort of, I've been reborn, I guess, and like molded and shaped a little bit. That now I knew, okay, like this is what it's like to have responsibility and to be trained to handle it. So
I think it's a very good way for anyone listening, right? I think it's a very good way. If you have enough self-awareness, I think I'll put it into two buckets. On the left side, you should join a startup if three things are true about you. The first is that you don't need someone to tell you what to do. And that is the most underrated, most important skill to have as anyone joining a startup. You need to know how to figure out what needs to be done and then do it. That is an extremely niche skill to have, but it's an extremely important skill to have. If you feel like you're better at operating when instruction is given to you, startups would be miserable for you. So you should go the corporate side when you first start out. And the other thing I'll say is on the startup side, if you feel like you operate better with doing many things, many different things, very, sort of sporadically, there's no structure, but you enjoy that. You enjoy chaos. You love chaos. You would love being at a startup because it is chaos. There's nothing more to it. But if that annoys you and you get annoyed when someone asks you to design a marketing post and the next day you have to go sit at a booth and the day after that you have to sit in an HR interview, if you don't like that, join a corporate job because you'll have more consistency in what you do. And so I think for anyone listening, especially if you're young, you need to have the maturity to ask yourself, what do you like? And there is no right or wrong answer. One is not better than the other, but it's about your career and your success and your growth. And where you fit better, you will always do better.
I love that. I love that, and it's 100% spot on, and I think this leads into the question I was going to ask you, because self-awareness is a really important thing, and some people either don't have it or they push it to the side because they acquiesce to what maybe their parents' expectations of them really is, right? Like in Uganda, in Nigeria, I know the answer to this, but in Uganda, what were there certain careers that were deemed acceptable for one to be in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the reasons when I look back that I never pursued teaching was because it was a low income career. It wasn't looked at a high end, a respectable career in Africa. And it's unfortunate because it's a little bit different in North America, but that's an example of a career that isn't as respected in, at least in East Africa, isn't as, high income. And so it was always said, well, That's not for you, Dheeraj. You gotta go bigger. You gotta be a businessman. You gotta be an entrepreneur. You can look into doing finance, investment banking, and those are always the except. My parents never had any hope for me to become a doctor. They knew I'd probably kill more than save more, and so I never had the pressure to do that. But so it was always business for me.
Yeah, yeah. In Nigeria, it was doctor, lawyer, engineer. Like
Right. Yeah.
those three were the main ones. Oh yeah, those three. Oh man, my son's a doctor, my son's a lawyer, my son's an engineer. You got those three, you're good. And my dad's an engineer, so I had a little bit of pressure as the first son to try and like make it. Over the last like 20 years, I think software developer got in there, accountant got in there, because accountant they kind of put under business, you know what I mean? Like they sort of like put it there, and those sort of got in. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do business. I didn't know what that meant.
Right. Yeah.
No clue.
No, I got lucky too. My dad's an entrepreneur, and he dropped out of grade 10. So he had no expectation from me to do exceptionally well in high school because he knew what success really meant and what was important in life, and it wasn't your grades. And he had learned that, he never used to attend class. He dropped out grade 10. His teachers gave up on him, but he had built an empire and he built a successful business. And I think to have parents or to have someone that understands that in your life, it just takes so much pressure away because you don't have to convince and explain to anyone why you do what you do because they understand, especially if you're going the entrepreneurship route and you have someone that's in your family that's been in that same journey.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So you've got entrepreneurship in your family. You're an entrepreneur right now, but you went to university and studied finance, right? And
Right.
I think you said because you are a numbers guy, not because you liked finance, right?
Well, it was just the highest
What was
grade.
the decision?
It was the highest grade, so I figured I'd just go with that one. Yeah. It was either marketing, HR, finance, or BTM. BTM, I said I can YouTube everything they teach me. HR, I didn't think was as important. Marketing, I'm not as creative from a outlet perspective, and so I figured finance works.
Okay. Okay. And have you used your finance degree or
Oh yeah. In fact, it's funny because I think that's people say that what you learn is useless. For me, it's the complete opposite. What I learned was really useful for two reasons. One, I run my own business. I do my own accounting. I know how to do my journal entries because I paid attention in class, and because I ended up tutoring others in accounting. And so I know my journal entries. I know my balance sheets, my income statements, and how to read them. I know how to make decisions. I know business talk, which I know sounds like such a tacky thing, but when you're having conversations with suppliers, when you're doing RFPs, when you're doing these things, just to be able to have a conversation and understand the conversation is already putting you up a little bit, and it's sort of just accelerating your knowledge in how fast you can get something done. And so I found that it was very helpful, but I'm not out here cracking DCFs or anything crazy like that. But I am using the very foundational skills, and I use Excel for a lot of just analysis and stuff. And I'm very keen on not touching the mouse when I do it. I like to do all my keyboard shortcuts. I'm a bit, sort of a bit me. It's still in me a little bit, and so I think it just helps me work better, see number better, solve problems better. It's not really directly, but I think in a lot of ways indirectly helped me.
nice, nice. And so let's talk about let's stay on the consulting track for a second. You get into Accenture, and for a lot of people, they hear, oh, Accenture is awesome, I'm gonna be a consultant. Like, and a lot of people who listen to this, a lot of people I know, I was that person. I didn't even know what that really meant. It's like, what like as a junior consultant at 22, what does that actually mean when you join Accenture? Like, what are you coming in to do at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it was the same for me. I found out about consulting, I think, in my end of second year or start of third year of university, and I said sounds like fun, and so I went behind it. Um, I think for anyone listening, if you're wondering what consulting is, I would sort of think of it in three segments. The first is strategy, the second is delivery, and the third is tech. That's how I think of it because that's how Accenture thinks of it. And I think a lot of firms that have similarities to that model. Strategy consulting, I would say, is very similar to if you are someone who has participated in case competitions. It's a little bit similar in that sense because what strategy is, it's shorter term, so quicker, short term. The second is if you're early in your career, whether you like it or not, you'll have to spend time building PowerPoint decks. And the third is that it's a lot more framework driven. It's a lot more presentation driven. You don't get to do the cool presentations with the CEOs like you see in the movies. You just make the deck and then the partner or MD does that for you. Um, that's the strategy part. You get paid a little bit more across all firms if you go in that path. If you're Deloitte, you're monitor Deloitte. If you're Accenture strategy. I'm sure Salem has a strategy group. Every firm has it. EY has another one too. So you get paid slightly more if you care about that. The second path is what I call consulting or delivery. That one tends to be medium to long-term engagements. I'd say anywhere from very, very roughly 3 months to 3 years. It could be very wide range, but that is one step after strategy. So strategy answers, what should we do? And then consulting delivery says, okay, let's do it. And then you're actually a part of a team that's trying to do something, whether that's change management, whether that is finance transformation, whether that's a tech transformation. You're trying to do something. You're not just building a deck and doing strategy, you're doing delivery. And the third is technology. If you feel like you're a little bit more on the technical side and you like that aspect of it, you don't want to leave your technical side for consulting, then technology has different spaces as well. Cybersecurity, there's a bit of coding as well, back end, front end, UI, UX design, that falls usually within technology. So if that's something that you want to spend more time doing, then that might be the space for you. So that's how I mentally think of consulting and explain it to people. The strategies is when a client says, what should we do? Or where should we go? The consulting is, okay, I agree, let's do it. And so you're doing it. And the technology is making the machine happen behind the delivery. So that's a mental framework for anybody that's curious about what consulting is like.
No, I think that's a good summary of that. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And for you specifically, you joined in 2022 as an analyst, then you became a senior consulting analyst, and now consultant team lead. Uh, Part of what people always think about is, okay, how do I progress, right? How do I climb the ladder? How do I, grow and get promoted in these places? Um, a lot of these companies, there's a process to this, and there are things that you need to do as part of that process. What did you need to do or show, convey to become a team lead that you are now?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think a lot of early career professionals spend a lot of time thinking about this. They're like, okay, how long will that take to get to consultant? Or my peers, I got promoted, I did not get promoted. Why not? Right? I think I was lucky enough to get promoted in almost every cycle that I've gone up for promotion. And I think it's come down to a couple of things that I'll share transparently with everyone. Um, the first thing is you very, very simply want to be doing the role of the next, you want to be operating at the next level. So you want to be doing you want to be in your next role already. If you're an analyst, you should be doing consultant work. If you're a consultant, you should be doing manager work. If you're a manager, you should be doing senior manager work. Simple as that. You should just always, from your mindset perspective, be always operating at a level above where you are right now. That is the way I was sort of told to do it. And that advice I took very seriously, to the point where when I would get staffed on projects, I would make sure that they were staffing me and billing me for one level up, because I knew my ability was there and I knew I could do it. And so if other people can see that too, they'll be willing to give you that opportunity. So one, make sure that you're always already on the next level, because for them to then say yes to that promotion and growth becomes very easy. The second thing is consulting is a people business. It's a relationship business. And that goes true for the work we do with clients, but also internally. And a lot of the times people do a lot of work, but no one knows what they're doing or no one can see what they're doing. So a big part of it comes down to your visibility. How are you communicating with people? Are you spending the time to get to know the leaders at your firm? Are you bold enough to ask someone who is a partner or even a CEO to get coffee with you? And the truth is, and the reality is, that 98% of people aren't. The 2% that are will often get more visibility than anyone else. And it's an unfortunate fact, but at least you know now. And so you have it in your choice if you want to be visible or not. But it comes down to being able to build relationships. And when people ask me, how do you build relationships? Um, a funny story happened. The CEO of Accenture called me out in a basically a presentation in front of 400 people. And he said, more people should be like you. And people were like, you look like a kid. Why does he know you? And I said, well, it was really funny because on my first week, I left work on a Monday. I came into the office on a Monday when there was no one, and I left work at 6 p.m., which isn't that late. but I ran into him into the elevator. In those 30 seconds, I had a decision to make. Either I could keep quiet and get on with my day, or I could use the 30 seconds to get to know him because he was just there. I had him for 30 seconds. Most 98% of people will get on with their day. The 2% that decide to say, "Hey, my name's Dhiraj. I thought I'd introduce myself. I just started. I love it here. And I know you're the CEO. You probably don't know who I am, but I hope that we can get to know one another." And he loved that. And I complimented his watch because I love watches and I knew the watch that he was wearing and he enjoyed that. And when we walked out, I said, David, you've never come to speak to the analysts. And I was very direct at that time. And he told me no one has called me. And I said, "Okay, bet. If I send you an email or an email tomorrow, will you come?" He said, "Absolutely. I'd be happy to." And the next day, I created an opportunity for him to come and speak to all the analysts in the office. Now, you see, the truth is anyone could have done that. It's not rocket science. But the mental decision and the mental courage to just have a conversation with someone that is way above you and just remember that at the end of the day, they're human. And I always remind myself that that person is probably my dad's age. And I talk to my dad a lot every day. So I'm very comfortable with that. So I never look at anybody differently. It doesn't matter if they're the CEO. I have never looked at them differently. I know they're human at the end of the day. They have stuff going on in their lives, but they're just human. They're not machines. And I think a lot of people value that. And a lot of leaders at high roles, at high positions are willing to speak to you. You just need to have the courage to walk in and say hi and ask for a 10-minute chat. And I think to that second point, visibility, courage, just being able to not necessarily show off, but just so people know all the effort that you're putting in and you're doing it for the firm is really important. And the last thing I would say is honestly, it's what people say about you when you're not there. It's about how do you deliver in every single project, your attitude, your commitment, the way you speak to people, the way you show up, the way you speak to clients. I remember I had on 2 occasions clients that basically wanted to hire me off of Accenture. And they told my MD that. They said, if this guy was free, I would hire him right now. And it was simply because I had sent him a couple of resources for his kid, nothing to do with the project. But I think it's just a mentality to be able to add value to someone else, not with the intention of being transactional, but with a genuine intention to help someone. And people will always then have great things to say about you. And if you're not in the room and the conversations are good, you're going to be in good hands. So that's my three sort of tips for anyone early in their career if they want to see success and grow in their career, especially in the early stages.
I think that's very powerful, and I think the last thing you said about value sort of encompasses all those 3 points that you mentioned, because you absolutely need to be doing the work of the level above you. But the only way that you can do that is if you show value to those who will let you do said work,
Right.
right? Because this is all, in many cases, some of these projects and tasks are actually very, very critical to business operations. So if I'm going to let an analyst take a panel of a task, I need to be sure they can do it. I need to have the confidence that you can do it, which means that you are valuable to me.
Right.
And being able to convey that is very important. And even in that example, people might be wondering, well, he's just brave. He's born that way, whatever. It's like with the CEO. Actually, by introducing yourself, I think in that particular moment, I know at least I would have thought this. If I was a CEO, and someone, a new hire introduced himself to me, complimented my watch. But by the way, I tell my students that I teach sales to that personalization is very key in any time we're trying to sell something to someone. If you can personalize your engagement in a way that's not just cookie cutter, hey, I'm trying to sell you something, and personalize that thing, people like it. People like to be seen. They like to be noticed. They absolutely like that. But what you've done is added value to his day because you have taken a rudimentary experience of being in the elevator and made it more enjoyable. And now he's thinking about, hey, this person. That is actually valuable to the CEO because it shows that, hey,
Right.
we've hired someone useful and this person I got to keep an eye on. They care about talent management and development. They care about that building the funnel. That's adding value. And you displayed that in that particular moment. And people don't always understand that doing that actually is a showcase of your value. So I would encourage people to do more of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and to your point, Bernie, I think a lot of my peers used to tell me, I used to put my hand up in tunnels of 300 people, and I used to ask a killer question, a very hard question. and people would say, you've got balls of steel. You're so brave. I think what people don't recognize is I don't think I'm braver than an average person. I think it's just, I also, if I'm in a town of 300 people and I'm asking a question to the group CEO of North America, I feel the butterflies in my stomach as well. I feel nervous too. Anyone would. It's human. It's definitely human. But it's your mentality to just remember that on the other side of the other person is just they actually want to answer your question, and they actually want to hear you. And I think it comes through repetition. And the more you do, the more bravery you sort of overcome that feeling of, oh, I should not put my hand up. Oh my God, this is going to be the worst day of my life. I'm going to get fired tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. The moment you cut that noise out and you do it 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 times, it then goes away. It goes away because you've done it so many times that your head knows that nothing's going to happen. And it's always hard the first time, the second time, the third time, and the fifth time. But when you go into 6, 7, 8, 9, I can promise you it won't get harder. And it's not that someone's braver than you. It's just that someone's willing to get through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 faster than you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is what it is. And if you can power through it's also just a brilliant confidence builder, but experience builder. I got one of my initial pieces of feedback that I got from a former boss who I consider a mentor was, you're such a smart person, but you sat in this meeting and you didn't say anything. And my response was, honestly, I didn't know what the heck was going on. And I didn't feel like I could add value in that meeting. And what she said to me was, no, I know that you have a lot of value to add in meetings like this. Think about it and speak up. From that moment, I was like, okay. You think about it as, I just got reamed out. Like, what's going on? But, internalize it. And then right from that moment, I was like, hey, if I'm in this meeting, they want me in this meeting for something, right? I'm supposed to be in this room for a reason. So I'm going to say what's on my mind. And sometimes, by the way, guys, even if you have a small thought, it could encourage another thought somewhere else, right? It's like kinetic energy, right? Like one connection is another connection. Someone goes, "Ooh, okay," and that sparks a conversation. So sometimes just say what's on your mind, and you'll see sparks fly. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to touch on Learn It because that's how we got connected. Where I think you and I both share this passion for education, passion for helping people develop. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about um your sort of journey as an educator, how that spawned Learn It and what Learn It is?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that don't know, LearnIT, we're an education services company. We work with school boards and schools. Right now, we're focused on Ontario. So all of the schools and boards that we work with are in Ontario. And we create experiences for students in between the grade 9 to 12. So towards the last couple of years of their high school journey, we essentially, the easy way to think about it is field trips, but better field trips. So instead of going to the amusement park and the zoo, which you can do to your parents, which you can do with your parents, we take you to a surgical simulation lab where our surgeons get trained. We take you to offices, Microsoft, Slalom, CJ, any type of cool office space. We take you to hospitals. We take you to airports to learn about aviation. So it's sort of like field trips, but 10x better. And the intent of that is to, one, expose students at an early age to different careers and give them enough knowledge and information to make a better decision after high school. But two, also put a chip in their brain to say, you know what, I think I can do this. We've had, students that are 16, 17 that have come to the surgical simulation center, and they've walked out there saying, I am going to be a surgeon. And it is just for that one student that it is meaningful and it is valuable. And I think it is the sort of our biggest mission to create these experiences across the province and make sure that every kid has the opportunity to attend something that they truly desire. The way that Learn It started, funnily enough, was when I was at UBC. I started my first education company in my third year, and it was a tutoring company. I used to do private tutoring, and I had a lot of students, and I figured I'd hire one more tutor and call it a business. And so It started as a tutoring company, and we grew that to about 500, 600 students on UBC campus because I had a good name over there. People knew me. And then when I moved to Toronto in 2022, that became difficult to run being physically distant from Vancouver. And we pivoted the business to then say, let's focus on bigger, more meaningful volume and impact with students. And that's when we shifted our model to working with schools and boards and shaping some of these incredible experiences.
Hmm. And they truly are incredible experiences. I've had the pleasure of facilitating a couple workshops while um, and I feel it myself, right? And I know that high school students can be fickle, and we were high school students. We understand what that is, but then when you see the glint in someone's eye when something clicks, right? That's a great thing. And we did an event at Slalom Office, and I'll never forget. Um, During one of the breaks that we had, the students was cornered me, and they had just seen or participated in a great sort of keynote from my colleague Kevin Durman, and they were like, "I have a question for Kevin." I'm like, "He's not here." Like, "Fine, I'll ask you." And there were all these questions about AI and what it means for them, and the ethical concerns about it, but also the productivity gains. And I was at that moment I thought the kids are going to be all right because the questions were really well thought out. I didn't expect that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, so
Cool with us because we were all in high school once, and kids are kids. And in fact, I think if I was in high school and I attended, I would be absolute chaos. I'd be the kid that was kicked out. I used to be a chaotic kid in school. And I think sometimes when you see, when you put a kid in an environment and in a space where they can see themselves for a long time and they're like, oh my God, I could work here. This is so cool. Their mindset completely changes. They become a little bit more confident. You can just see their enthusiasm and excitement to learn, which if someone is 16 and they are deciding not to put out their phone and they want to participate and learn, that you've got something magical because that in itself is a win when someone picks this experience over their phone. That's how we even look at it from our perspective.
mhm, I love that. I love that because I think the first day I met you, you told me that let me know if I'm getting this wrong. I think you said my my biggest competitor is social media.
Yeah, I did say
Not
that.
not even, any other education services company, because your biggest competitor is whatever is taking the attention of the students, right?
Right.
And I thought that was interesting. I like that. I like that thought process because it's true.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
yeah. It's funny. I mean, I I always think of my competition and I say, well, look, we're all trying to achieve the same mission. We're trying to do something good for students. It's not just me. It's our biggest competitor is the thing that grabs the most amount of attention from someone who's 16, 17, 18. And it's always been like that. And it's always about, can we create something so cool that students decide and choose not to use their phone. And sometimes they don't, and that's fine, but that's feedback for us. When the kids are on their phone and we're doing something, that is such good feedback because we know it's not good enough. And so we have been hard on ourselves and we've put our bar very high to compete with TikToks and Instagram Reels. But I think it's where the bar needs to be, especially with today's generation.
I love that. I love that. Um, a lot of the programming that you've done as part of Learnis and I've participated in has been around AI and skill building in that particular aspect. Um, how do you see it affecting kids and their development and their future career prospects? Uh, is it really the productivity tool that's going to accelerate people's ability to, develop promising careers, or is it going to take away jobs and make it harder for the kids? Where do you stand on that?
Well, I'm always an optimist. I always say that if you're smart enough, your life can change with it. And if you're naive enough, your life can also change with it, but in a bad way. And I think with the students, I wasn't around when the calculator first came out, but a lot of educators that I speak to allude to that as a very similar experience, which is when ChatGPT first came out, the initial instinct for anyone that is 16, and that would be me as well, transparently, would say, perfect, no more homework. I'm going to plug this into ChatGPT, and this code for my comp sci test is insane and it's so good. And this English essay is better than I could have ever written. And it's just an initial instinct for anyone that is 16 or 17 is to say, oh my God, more chill time for me. I don't need to do my assignments. And I think that is a very fair reaction for someone that age. Um, but I think now with let's say 2 years in roughly from when this first started to blow up, um, we've got to a point where students are like one, I think schools have become mature in their understanding of how to control it and when it should be used. But I think students are now using it more like a calculator, and it's being less seen as a cheating tool and more as a supplementary tool. Um, a huge star on that with the dependency of how the teacher uses it and how the school uses it. But what I have seen is now it's being shifted to be more like a calculator than an actual cheating tool. And a big part of that is how do the teachers encourage its use and encourage its playtime and its creativity? Because if I was a teacher in today's age, I would, encourage it, but I would encourage it in a way that is impactful and still stimulating your brain to think versus taking that away from you. And I remember one of the first sessions I did for teachers on ChatGPT when it first came out. I had a teacher at the back, and this was maybe 35 people. So not a very big session, but it was all teachers. And this teacher puts his hand up, and I said yes. And he looks at me and he says, "I hate Sam Altman." And I said, "Okay." And then the second thing he says is, "I'm a computer science teacher, and I have gone back to doing pen and paper exams because my kids are submitting code that even I don't understand." And I think there's two ways to look at that. Is one, like, that teacher, them, they're so opposed to it. They have this wall up that they're not willing to be a bit innovative in how they assess. But two, the way that I look at it is there's a lot of care. The reason that teacher is so passionate is because they deeply care about their students also learning. And I think now teachers have also matured, which is a very good thing. There's a much lesser proportion of teachers that are against AI in any way. And so I think high schoolers are getting enough playtime with it and enough use of it. And I think they're building a bit of maturity around the future of work. And when I think about if when people come to me and they're that age and they say, okay, what should we focus on? I say focus on the things that AI can't do. It's really as simple as that. It sounds like the most simple advice, but I'm saying to them, focus on your problem solving ability, focus on your ability to build relationships, focus on your critical thinking, your ability to take really large amounts of information and condense it. Focus on the things that AI can help you with, but at the end of the day, a human is going to be at the center of that. And if you do that, then you're going to build such a strong foundation. And the second thing I tell them is go and bloody play. Go and use it, go and break it, go and play with it. Because whether you like it or not, whether your teacher likes it or not, whether your principal likes it or not, it doesn't matter because it is the future. It is where we are headed. It is where we are right now. And so you're either with everyone or you're falling behind, and the choice is yours. So I always tell them, play as much as you can. You try and make an agent, watch YouTube videos, just have fun with it, play with it. Because it doesn't matter if you want to be a carpenter, a plumber, a doctor, a bloody magician. If you use it, you will always operate at a higher level than if you don't.
Mhm. I think that's great advice. And I think that advice applies not just to students, for people who are trying to transition into tech. I get people who want the benefits of the ecosystem. And they're like, how do I do it considering everything that AI is doing? And to your point, play with it, build some stuff, develop a portfolio of things that you built.
Yeah.
That portfolio is going to take you very far compared to a resume, right? If you can say that, hey, I solved this problem, or I created something that can potentially solve this problem with agents, and you can convey that to people, you, again, going back to that word value, right? Like, people want to hire for value. So I think you're spot on with playing around with
Yeah, and it's such a easy way to impress people that aren't playing, that are at positions like a VP or like a senior manager or a partner, because they don't have the time to play transparently. They don't have as much time to play. And if you have more time than them, then you have a golden opportunity to create something that adds value and impresses them. And if you see it that way, then you're looking at this whole thing a different way, which is a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dirge, I got one more question for you. You've been so generous with your time this evening. It's a question I ask everyone. When you look back on your career so far, I know your career is early, but you've already done more things than a lot of people who've been working for 20 years. So when you look at what you've done in your career so far, both in Accenture and LearnIT, what has mattered more? The skills that you deliberately went out and built, or the opportunities you didn't plan for, but you chose to say yes to?
That's a very, very hard question. Um,
So we did suffer a glitch during live recording where Dhiraj's audio and video just went poof, but he was kind enough to send over a recording of him answering this question. I hope you enjoy his answer, and thank you again for checking out Tech State of Mind with me, Bernie Uche. Here's Dhiraj again with the final word.
When I think back to my career, I think what mattered significantly more to me were the opportunities that came my way that I didn't expect. I think everything that has happened in my career, from getting into education to spending time with students to even getting my first few internships, it was never really about, oh, I'm going to study this and get this skill and get this job because I'm studying this. It was always just saying yes to a lot of opportunities, to meeting a lot of people, to being genuinely curious about the work they do. And I think people start to see that in you, especially when you're approaching everything with a positive mindset, when you're always saying yes to things and you have excitement to bring to anywhere that you go. And by far, I think that we over-index on, and we think that we know exactly where we're going to end up because we're studying this and because we're doing that. But life has its own plans, and as you meet people, as you encounter things, I think your journey just takes you along its way. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about growing, even as an entrepreneur or as an individual, is you just say yes to things and you meet great people. And so absolutely 100%, I think the reason that I've been able to grow and I continue to grow is because some of the opportunities that have come my way, and it's not always been about the skills that I said I'm going to deliberately build.